Hello friends and welcome back. Well, this is it, isn't it? It's been 2 years of preparations, 2 years of toil, 2 years of hard work. And finally, the business end of the examination is here. You've just written your CBSE board examinations, or for that matter, all your board examinations. Now it's time for the competitives. The JEE main examination is around the corner. For 2 years, you've struggled hard, you've had a lot of dreams, and all these are going to be realized based on how you perform in the examination that's on Sunday for those who have opted for the pen and paper examination, and in about 10 days' time for those who have opted for the online version of it. So we here at Byju's, who've been busy throughout the year giving you tips and insights and a lot of material on how to prepare well for the examination, come with yet another series of Facebook Live sessions. Yesterday, we had a session which focused on how can you prepare with about a week to go for the examination in chemistry. Today's session focuses on mathematics. So today we are going to look at how best can you prepare for your JEE main examination now with about 3-4 days to go, keeping in mind mathematics. But to be honest, I cannot give you a lot of insights specific to mathematics now, because this is not the time to focus on one particular subject, to focus on one particular chapter or on one particular concept. This is the time to wrap up your preparations. This is the time for you to give those finishing touches to all the subjects and make sure that you come out with flying colors in the examination. Before we move into the specifics of mathematics, it's very important that I give you certain generic details about the examination and also certain generic points that you must bear in your mind in order to perform well in the examination. I do understand that this session is something that should have focused on mathematics, but I'm going to devote a bit of its time for all these generic discussions. So what are the things that are absolutely must on the day of the examination or on the day before the examination? First and foremost, make sure that your bag is well packed on the day before the examination to avoid all these last minute rushes on the day of the examination, which might lead you to forget a few things. And if you forget the hall ticket, you'll not be allowed to enter the examination hall. So make sure that the hall ticket is safely placed inside the bag well in advance, and all the things that are necessary for the examination must also be packed into your bag on the day before the examination itself. Avoid all these last minute rushes before the examination, because mental stress of any kind is not good when you are going to write an examination of this magnitude. Yet another thing that is crucial for you is your mental calm and peace, and for this it's important that you sleep well. On the day before the examination, please make sure that you get your minimum quota of undisturbed sleep, and also you eat healthy food. Please avoid eating junk on the day before the examination. Please avoid eating a very heavy dinner or breakfast on the day of the examination, because with all these, you will not be in the right state of mind to write the examination. So these are certain things that you must remember before you go and attempt the examination. It's very important that you go into the examination with the right state of mind. Be calm, be composed. It's important that you have your calm and composed state of mind when you enter into the examination hall, because without a calm and composed mind, you will definitely commit blunders which otherwise you can avoid very easily. So it's important that you are healthy, fit, have slept well, and are in the right state of mind to attempt the examination. Yet another thing that I would recommend all of you to do is to go into the examination center way before the allocated time. This is because most of you people will be writing examinations in a center that is quite unknown to you. And do not be in a position where you're running around a new campus that you've never seen before, searching for the examination hall on the day of the examination. Now, you know that this is a competitive examination. This is not your CBSE board examination. Here, the aim is not to score 360 marks. Well, we know that there are 90 questions. Each question carries 4 marks, 360 marks. You have 180 minutes allocated for the examination, which means that you get effectively 2 minutes per question. But in a competitive examination, I am pretty sure that 99% of the students who are looking at this particular video or who are preparing for the examination are not trying to score 100% mark. Well, it's quite impossible to score 100% marks in the competitive examination. You're looking to get a score that will take you over the line, give you a chance to write the advanced examination, or get you an admission into one of these colleges which considers JEE main examination marks. So your aim is not to score full marks, and scoring full marks is quite an impossible task here. So in an examination of this kind, every lost minute is going to cost you very much. It's not like a board examination where you can attempt to complete the paper in 2.5 hours. So even if you are late for the exam by 15 minutes, you can still manage to complete the examination and still manage to score as much marks as you expected to score. But with a competitive examination of the kind of JEE main, if you are late to the examination center and if they still let you write the examination, then you're actually losing out valuable minutes which would have translated into marks. So never be in a situation where you're running around the campus last minute looking for your exam hall and you lose out on those 10 minutes in which you could have scored 5 questions, 20 marks gone. Your rank is going to go down by a huge number. So never be in this particular situation. Well, these are certain generic aspects that you must all keep in your mind on the day of the examination, before the day of the examination, now that the examination is almost there. Then let's look at the paper. Now, the JEE main examination has 90 questions. All these are objective questions, single correct answer kind of problems. Each question carries +4 marks and a -1. I'm not very sure if there are questions which carry +8 and -2 like the time when I used to write my examination. At present, it's a 360 mark paper. Each question carries 4 marks and a negative of -1 if you get the question wrong. So these 90 questions are from 3 sections: physics, chemistry, and mathematics. Each section has equal weightage: 30 marks from physics, 30 marks from chemistry, 30 marks from mathematics. So what does this mean? This means that you have to be very clever about allocating time for physics, chemistry, and mathematics, because you have to make absolutely wonderful use of all the 180 minutes that is allocated to you and maximize the score that you can get. Yet another thing that you must remember is that JEE main examination does not ever have subject-based cutoff. So even if you score a 0 in physics and score full marks in chemistry and mathematics, you can still end up getting a much better score than someone who has 60 in chemistry, physics, and mathematics. So it's quite imperative that you allocate the time based on your strengths. Now, if you are to ask me if there is a generic trend that students follow, then I would say that yes, in fact, there is a generic trend that students follow. Now, physics and mathematics, these are quite intense. Intense with regard to the fact that it is not just enough to know concepts in these two subjects, but you will have to laboriously solve problems and arrive at solutions. This is more so in mathematics and a little less in physics. But in chemistry, barring physical chemistry wherein you might have to do numericals, the rest of the concepts, the rest of the problems which come from other concepts can be actually solved pretty soon. So chemistry is sort of light when it comes to the amount of work that you need to do to get these questions right. So normally students tend to put chemistry right in between math and physics. A sandwiched chemistry actually eases your mind a little. If you're starting with mathematics and you've done an hour of mathematics, very intense problems that made you work out for pages, then you don't go to physics, because physics also will have similar kind of problems. Then you go to chemistry. Chemistry, right in between these two intense subjects, will give you a relaxed state of mind for about 45 minutes, and then you can attempt the final section, whichever of physics or maths is left out. This generally tends to be a good practice that students follow in the main examination. Now, also, another thing that you must remember is that you never allocate equal amount of time for physics, chemistry, and mathematics. The reason being the same as I have stated before, because in chemistry you have a lot of questions which you can answer with just one cursory look. That is not the case with physics and mathematics. In physics, when you look at a problem, you have to identify which concept has this problem been asked from, understand which formula do you need to use, and then arrive at the solution. In math, it's a little more complicated. You have to look at the problem, you have to identify the concept, you have to identify which are the sets of formulae that you need to use, and actually laboriously calculate the entire solution and reach at the solution. So mathematics is a little more intense than physics. So chemistry, in my opinion, deserves about 40 minutes time, not more than 50 for sure. 40 to 50 is a good amount of time. If you are really smart, you will attempt 25 to 30 chemistry questions, get them right in 40 minutes. And then you allot about an hour for physics. In 1 hour, attempt 20, 25, 30 physics problems, try to get as much as possible. And then about an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes for mathematics, solely because mathematics will involve a lot of calculations, and you just cannot help this fact. Because if you do not allocate so much time for mathematics, even though you know concepts, even though you know the steps, you'll actually not have time to solve all these things. There, yet another thing which comes into picture is the fact that you must put chemistry before the last section for sure. If you're starting with chemistry, if that is how you like doing it, well and good. But please never end the examination with chemistry. The reason for this is, suppose you start with math and then do physics. Sometimes what happens is we lose a track of time. And by losing a track of time, if you end up using 2.5 to 2 hours 45 minutes for physics and math, you're just allocating 15 to 30 minutes on a section where freebies are available in plenty. So you never leave freebies in main examination. See, in a main examination, it's not about quality, it's about quantity. If you attempt 20 very difficult problems and get each of these 20 problems right, you still are at a disadvantage compared to another friend of yours who has done 40 simple problems right, because these 20 problems will fetch you 80 marks, whereas those 40 problems will fetch him 160 marks. So attempting difficult problems and challenging yourselves and going for that rush of having solved a very complex problem does not reap rewards in an examination such as the JEE main examination. So please do not neglect chemistry, because chemistry is quite an easy section to score marks in. You must be wondering, is this a chemistry section? Because this sir here is speaking a lot about chemistry. Well, it is mathematics section, but I keep emphasizing on chemistry because students tend to forget chemistry and they lose out on all these easy marks which they could have scored. Now let's come to mathematics. Mathematics has about, let's say, 28 to 35 chapters based on different curriculum, based on the way things are presented in different environments. In our app, Byju's the learning app, we present mathematics of 11th and 12th standard in 35 chapters. So now these 35 chapters are all not important from your JEE main examination point of view. There are a few chapters such as, let's say a chapter on relations in 11th standard, which will not fetch direct questions in your board exam, in your JEE main examination, or a chapter on PMI. Now, principle of mathematical induction will not normally fetch you direct questions in the JEE examination. Also, principle of mathematical induction is not a technique that you use in the main examination because it's a proving technique and there are no to prove questions in your main examination. So not every chapter is equally important out of these 35 chapters that we cover in 11th and 12th standard. Now in the previous sessions, if you remember, through the past 3 or 4 months, we've been doing a lot of Facebook Live sessions. In all these sessions, we've given you a very deep understanding of where are the questions going to come from? What is the weightage that is allocated to each section, be it calculus, algebra, trigonometry, stats and prop, coordinate geometry. All these have been covered in great detail in those sessions. Today, I will just skim you through all these chapters and I will tell you what are the most important concepts in these particular chapters. The first thing that you have to remember before I take you through these chapters is this is not the time, at least in mathematics, to start with new concepts. If you've not seen a concept thus far, in the next 2 or 3 days, please do not attempt to study that concept, because mathematics is not about knowing a concept. It's about solving problems and being able to reach the solution for a problem which is based on that concept. If you do not have concept clarity now, you cannot solve a lot of problems now, because now is not the time to start looking at fresh problems. So in mathematics, at least, if you have not seen a concept thus far, please do not attempt to see that concept for the first time now in the next 2 or 3 days before the examination. So when I go through all these chapters and speak about 1 or 2 key concepts of this chapter, if you've not seen that concept, please do not attempt to understand that concept now. It's okay. You can leave that concept aside. Try and focus on the concepts that you already know very well. Try and focus on those things where you've solved n number of problems and where you're very confident that any twisted problem can be solved easily. Only such concepts are the ones that you need to focus on now. It is advisable to go through all these concepts that you know already once. A cursory glance, go on flipping the pages of the textbook and see if I know this concept, if I know this formula. But what is really important at this point in time, at least from mathematics perspective, is for you to look at a lot of problems, not really solve them, but analyze as to how can you solve this problem. This is important because the first 2 or 3 minutes in every section of the paper that you solve must be spent at going through all the 30 problems. You should not be in a state of mind where you get out of the examination hall and then realize, oh, there was this problem which could have been solved easily, but I did not even have the time to look at the problem. So the first 2 or 3 minutes when you enter into a section of the examination, you are going to spend those time in analyzing each and every problem. You go through all the 30 problems and analyze whether this problem is something that I can solve. Do I know the required formulae? Can I do this in 2 minutes? If yes, I will attempt them first. If this is a problem that's very easy, yet it's going to take 5-6 minutes, I'm going to keep them for the end. Because in the beginning, I'm going to solve easy problems which can be done in less than 2 minutes. There are going to be a lot of such problems which you can solve in less than 2 minutes. There are going to be an equal amount of problems which will take you 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. For example, in one of the past years, probably 2014 if I am not wrong, there was a question from methods of differentiation. Now this question was one of the easiest questions in the paper, but the question involved you to differentiate a composite function. A composite function which was basically a rational function. So you had a composite function with both the arguments as rational functions. So this would make that problem extremely complicated to solve, even though the concept involved is very simple. You just need to use quotient rule and chain rule of differentiation and arrive at the solution. But because there were quotients and the problem was the function was quite cumbersome, if you actually sit down and solve that problem, it would have taken the best of best students 5 to 6 minutes. So such problems have to be kept for the absolute end. You're not supposed to solve those problems in your first few minutes of the examination, because the first few minutes of the examinations must be devoted towards solving problems which are very easy, straightforward, can be done within 2 minutes. Limits, for example, is a chapter which will actually give you 2 or 3 questions in the main examination, and all these questions which come in the main examination from limits continuity can be solved within a minute. Like if you know the L'Hopital's theorem, and if you know a little bit of tricks of continuity and differentiability, you can actually solve these problems in less than a minute. And if you're good with that chapter, why would you go and solve an MOD problem which takes you 6 minutes? You can actually go and solve 2 limits problem in 2 minutes and get 8 marks rather than waste 6 minutes to get 4 marks. You never know that if you're doing this problem right as well. So these problems go to the end. Towards the end, when you have 20 minutes to go and you have 5 long problems to solve, then you are even more confident to solve these problems because you already know that I have got 20 questions correct. I already have 80 marks. Rather than solving these in the beginning when you don't know whether you're going to get it right and you still do not have any marks in your kitty. So all these lengthy long problems go to the end. So let's go through the chapters. The first chapters that we look at is sets, relations, and functions. Now, sets will definitely fetch a question, but this question is going to be more or less some concept that's going to, in the end, ask you to compute the number of elements in either a set or a number of ordered pairs, Cartesian product. So number of elements is something that sets will always fetch questions from. Relations and functions, well, with relations, it's a definite that the question that is going to come is going to test your knowledge in the types of relations. Whether the relation is a reflexive relation, symmetric relation, transitive relation, all these are things that you have to remember, and the question that comes from relations and functions is quite a simple question, so you cannot afford to lose the mark from the question which comes from relations and functions. The other question which tends to come normally from functions is based on inverse of a function. Sometimes binomial operators also fetch questions, but binomial operators are much less frequent than types of relations and inverse of a function. Types of functions, injective function, surjective function, bijective function, also sometimes fetch questions in the examination. Then let's move on to trigonometry. Now, trigonometry in our curriculum and Byju's the learning app, we have 4 chapters. We have trigonometric functions, which is the basic trigonometry chapter, trigonometric equations, solution of triangles, and inverse trigonometric functions. Now, from these chapters, direct questions do not normally appear in the examination. At most, direct questions can appear from solution of triangle, where they will test your knowledge on different types of centers, such as the circumcenter, incenter, orthocenter, etc. And also, you have to know the sine rule, cosine rule, and projection rule very well to get marks from the question that comes from solution of triangles. Heights and distances is another concept from trigonometry, which will sometimes fetch direct questions in the main examination. Now, from other chapters, for example, inverse trigonometric functions, questions do not directly come in the main examination. Inverse trigonometric function finds a lot of application in calculus. Normally, in integration and differentiation problem, you'll have to use the tricks of the game that you learn in inverse trigonometric functions. The most important concept in inverse trigonometric function is domain and range. You must know what is the domain and range of all the inverse functions. And also, you must know a few standard formulae, what is tan inverse of a plus b, and all these things. Then we have, of course, trigonometric equations and trigonometric functions. These are 2 very basic chapters. In trigonometric equations, you should know what is the general solution of sine, cos, and tan, because sometimes questions do come which will directly test your knowledge of the general solution of sine, cos, and tan. Trigonometric functions as such will not fetch any question, but of course, it's the first and the most preliminary chapter of trigonometry. So understanding what are the trigonometric ratios of allied angles, complementary angles, half angles, etc. definitely be worth it, and it is definitely something that will find application throughout calculus as well as other trigonometry problems. So this is about trigonometry. Then we have a few chapters in algebra, quadratic equations, where the nature of roots, sum and product of roots, these are the most important concepts. Complex number, where the Moivre's theorem, nth root of unity, what is modulus of a complex number, what is the argument of a complex number, all these are important concepts there. Sequences and series, of course, you learn about AP, GP, HP, you'll also learn about the arithmetico-geometric progression. But the most important concept in sequence and series is the relationship between the different means. The relationship between arithmetic mean and geometric mean. Well, this finds application across every concept of mathematics. It is also possible to create a trigonometry question which can be solved using the relation between AM and GM. It is possible to form a statistics problem. It is possible to form problem in other chapters of algebra using this concept of AM and GM. So AM and GM, single most important concept in sequence and series. Binomial theorem will fetch 1 question. Of course, there are concepts from where direct questions come in binomial theorem, middle term, number of terms, and things of these kind. But multinomial expansion and a few permutation and combination relations such as NCR plus NCR minus 1 is n plus 1 CR, or NCR is n by R, n minus 1 CR minus 1. These are certain relations that, if you remember, can make your life a little bit easy in the examination. And there is 1 chapter which we specifically introduce in our app in Byju's curriculum, which is inequalities, modulus, and logarithm. This is as such not a chapter. As such, questions will not come from inequalities. But it's very important to know this, because a lot of questions across mathematics will become easy to solve if you actually understand what are inequalities, what does a modulus function do, what are the properties of logarithms. Now, the wavy curve method, a lot of students are not even aware of the wavy curve method because CBSE does not teach it through their NCERT textbooks. So wavy curve method is very, very important, because wavy curve method is the easiest method to solve inequality problems. So please look at our app. If you've access to Byju's material, you can definitely look at our app and go through this chapter on inequalities for all these crucial small tiny bits which are missing from NCERT. Of course, PMI will not fetch any questions. So is the case with linear programming. These two chapters will not fetch any direct questions in the main examination. Then let's move into PMI. Let's move into permutations and combinations, probability and statistics. Now, quite heavy chapters, especially permutations and combinations with general arrangements and again multinomial applications of multinomial theorem in PNC, repeated arrangements. All these are concepts which can fetch direct questions in the examination. PNC tends to fetch a lot of questions sometimes. You might even get 2 questions from PNC in the examination. These 2 questions tend to be very simple. If you know the trick, you can solve this in like 30 seconds. So PNC is a very, very high ROI chapter. ROI is return on investment. So if you invest your time on chapters such as on PNC, permutations and combinations, you will end up getting a lot of reward for this particular chapter. Probability, again, 2 questions are definite from probability in the main examination. Classical probability problems wherein it's all about whether your brain, the light turns on in your brain, whether the problem clicks. These are things that will help you solve probability problems. Of course, Bayes' theorem, binomial distribution, these things are traditional problems and they don't tend to normally ask direct questions from these concepts in the main examination. Sometimes questions from independent events and conditional probability do appear. But then what's really, really important in probability is for that button to click and make, a flash as soon as possible. As soon as you look at the problem, you should be able to identify how to solve this particular problem. That is something that would come with practice. Well, this is not the time to actually do a lot of practice problems because it's time to wrap up things. But if you're good at probability, it's a big bonus for you because you can solve probability problems in absolutely no time at all if you know how to solve these problems. It's very, very important for you have to have that gut feeling, the instinct in probability problems. Mathematical reasoning is a chapter that will fetch questions in the examination. Logical connectives is a very important concept. It will definitely fetch 1 question in the examination. Tends to be a very simple problem. If you know what a tautology is, what a fallacy is, well, it's definitely going to give you 4 marks. Very easy marks in your kitty in less than 30 seconds. That's what mathematical reasoning is. We're left with 2 sections, 2 very, very important sections: coordinate geometry, calculus. I'll go to calculus right in the end because my Facebook live session on calculus was way before. It was one of the first Facebook live sessions, so I'm sure you must have all forgotten what did I say in that Facebook live session. So coordinate geometry before calculus. Coordinate geometry is a plethora of chapters. You have circles, you have straight lines, you have all these conic sections, parabola, hyperbola, ellipse, and then you have vectors in 3D, which also will go inside coordinate geometry, in my opinion. Now, the single most important chapter for JEE main examination from the entire list of chapters is parabola. Because if you know the concepts of parabola, you can also solve problems from circles and ellipse and hyperbola, because a lot of combination problems come from these chapters. And more often than not, the common figure which will exist across these chapters is going to be a parabola. And in parabola, the most important concept is parametric form of a parabola. A lot of students forget this and try to solve parabola problems using the Cartesian form of a parabola, and this will be very, very difficult for you to solve within 2 minutes. If you know the parametric form of a parabola, problem solving becomes really easy in parabola. Multiples of concepts are there in this chapter: tangents, normals, focal chord, latus rectum, things of these kind. Parabola will fetch a lot of questions. In fact, 1 or 2 questions every year will come from parabola, and questions from hyperbola and circles can also have a parabola in it. So parabola is pretty much the most important chapter, single most important chapter from the whole of mathematics. Ellipse and hyperbola, well, unlike parabola, well, you have to know shifted, rotated parabolas, but ellipse and hyperbola, you can actually not know shifted, rotated ellipses and hyperbolas. You can just know the standard ellipse and hyperbola and still manage to score marks from the questions which come from this chapter. In the JEE main examination specifically, shifted, rotated hyperbolas will absolutely never appear, ellipses and hyperbolas. But parabolas, yes, they will tend to shift and rotate the parabola from the standard form that you know. So you should be prepared for parabolas which are shifted and rotated. Straight lines, yes, pair of straight lines is the most important concept from the JEE main examination point of view. You should know how to manipulate the equations of a straight line from one form to another. Pretty important in the examination. 3D is another chapter that will fetch 1 or 2 questions in the examination. Vectors is important to understand the concepts of 3D. 3D, again, the whole chapter is important. Planes and straight lines, quite important in 3D. So if you know how to solve 3D problems, well, it's definitely going to be worth for you in gold, because it's going to give you 1 or 2 questions definitely in the examination. Now let's go to calculus. Yet another very, very, very important section. 8 questions out of 30 will be from calculus. And at least 3 or 4 questions out of these 8 will be from definite integration. So definite integration is very, very important in the JEE main examination. And there is a trick to solve definite integration problems very soon. What is a definite integral? A definite integral is nothing but area under a curve. So if you can draw the curves of functions, then definite integral problems becomes very easy. So as much as possible, try to convert a definite integral problem into a graphing problem, plot the graph, find out what is the area under the curve, and solving this problem becomes very easy. Limits is a chapter which is very high ROI because it's a very simple chapter. Concepts are pretty straightforward. You know the L'Hopital's theorem. This is not board examination. You don't have to do problems step by step. You can actually use L'Hopital's and solve problems very soon. So limits, definitely a very important chapter, high ROI, and most importantly, questions which come from limits and continuity can be solved within no time at all. So this is an important chapter. Differential equations will fetch 1 question, but question which comes from differential equation tends to be pretty difficult. So it's not advisable to invest a lot of time in differential equations at this point of time. Go through definite integral problems. Though they are difficult, you know sure shot that there are certain problems that are going to come from definite integrals. Chapters such as methods of differentiation and basic indefinite integrals, well, you should know all these concepts now. Direct problems normally don't come from these chapters, but without knowing these concepts, you can't solve application of derivative problems or definite integrals. Yes, of course, I forgot application of derivatives. 1 or 2 problems come from application of derivatives. Extrema, most important concept, monotonicity, increasing, decreasing function, pretty much the concepts which will be tested in the examination. So this is more or less mathematics. Single most important chapter, parabola. High ROI chapters will be chapters such as limits, sequences and series, and of course chapters such as relations and functions. These are high ROI chapters. But this is not the point of time where you can start looking at these chapters. If you've not looked at relations and functions, please don't start looking at relations and functions at this juncture. Especially in mathematics, please don't pick up any new concept. Please don't start solving any new concept. This is the time to look at problems, analyze problems, and understand if you can solve this problem quickly or not. You have to get that mindset because that is very important in the examination. You'll have to look at a problem, see the problem, analyze the problem, understand whether I can solve it fast or not before attempting the problem. This is what you do in the 2-3 minutes before you start doing a section. Analyze every problem, decide which problem can be solved in less than 2 minutes, which needs more than 4 minutes, which are the problems that I'm going to completely leave. So this is something that will help you in solving math in about an hour and 15 minutes. I will be concluding my session with a few questions. I'm going to take a few questions, but before that, there are a few things that I need to tell you. JEE Main is a very, very important examination. You've spent 2 years of your life in the hope that you will clear JEE Main examination. But believe me, life does not end with JEE Main examination. JEE is just a part of your life. A lot of wonderful things happen to people who do not clear JEE as well. So there's nothing to be worried about. Even if you do not clear JEE, it's not the end of life. It's not a wall for you. You're not going to go hit a wall and you're not going to say that my life has come to a complete standstill. JEE is another examination. If you clear it, well and good, amazing. All your efforts will be paid and all your efforts will yield great results. If you've not cleared it, please do not be worried about it. So please go into the examination hall with a very calm and peaceful mindset. Do not be under any kind of stress and pressure, please, because it's very important and this is just an examination. I'm going to take a few questions and with that I'll close. Ritesh here asked me a very good question. What do you think will be the decent score in maths in main examination? Well, Ritesh, I think because main normally doesn't have a subject-wise cutoff, you actually have a cutoff for the main examination to qualify for the advanced examination, and also those colleges which take you in through the scores that you get in the main examination do not consider a subject-wise score. So it's very difficult to say what is a decent score in mathematics. So let me give you an example. So there was this student of mine who ended up scoring about 200 marks in the main examination. He scored about 100 marks in chemistry, about 80 marks in mathematics, and just 20 marks in physics. But he ended up getting a very good seat because he had a score of 200, which is considered to be a decent score in the JEE main examination. So if you are good in math, 80 to 100 is a very good score in mathematics. If you are not good in math and if you can compensate for losing out in math by scoring well in chemistry and physics, then of course 40-50 should also be a good score in mathematics. But if you're good in maths, attempt to get about 100 marks out of 120 in mathematics. Well, Akarsh here asked me a question. Please tell me what are the important chapter we prepare for last minute preparation. Well, the whole session today I've kept telling you that this is not a time to start preparing for any particular chapter. This is the time to look at past papers, look at which are the chapters from where a lot of questions come, look at newer and newer kinds of problems and try to analyze whether you can solve this problem in 2 minutes or not. Try to analyze the nature of the problem. If you can do this problem, are you supposed to leave this problem? This is what you have to gain in these next 2-3 days. You're not supposed to practice new problems in math. And unlike chemistry and physics, where probably knowing concepts will give you marks, in math, knowing concepts will never give you marks. Probably a chapter such as mathematical reasoning or relations and functions might give you a 4-mark or 2 questions right if you are, if you know a concept. But rest of the chapters, just knowing the concept is not going to help you in mathematics. So last minute preparation, I cannot actually recommend one chapter which you have to focus on and which will help you score, like, let's say 20 marks more. That's not going to happen because the spread is going to be throughout. It's JEE main, it's not advanced. So you cannot expect a chapter to get 5 questions and another chapter to not get any question at all. In main, more or less, they cover questions from each and every chapter. So there's no one single chapter that you have to focus on in these last days before the examination. And I'm going to take one last. Sushmita here asks me a very important question, which is, please tell about time management during the examination. Well, I've kept telling you time management is crucial. Competitive examination, you're not trying to score 360 marks. You're trying to score more than the rest. You're trying to be competitive. You're trying to compete with your fellow examiners and you're trying to get marks in the examination. So time management is very crucial. How do you do time management? Well, it depends on what are your strengths and weaknesses. For a person like me, I would allocate 40-45 minutes for chemistry, an hour 15 minutes for math, 1 hour for physics, and try and maximize what I can do. I would start with physics, go on to chemistry, do math right in the end. This is how I would do my examination, but it's dependent completely on you. One small suggestion and a request is don't leave chemistry for the last, because chemistry will give you a lot of direct questions. Cursory glances will help you fetch marks in chemistry, which will not be the case in physics and math. So at the end of the exam, with just 20 minutes left, if you start chemistry and you then start repenting that, oh my God, I knew this question, I should have done chemistry before. So please do chemistry before the 2-hour mark. Leave the last 1 hour for these tormentors, physics and maths, because we are demons. We give you very complicated, long problems. Chemistry people are quite nice people. They don't give you really complicated, long problems in main examination. And please do look beyond NCERT for mathematics. That is not the case with physics and chemistry. Physics and chemistry, more or less in the main examination, you can score a lot of marks if you know NCERT textbooks in and out. Not the case with mathematics, especially chapters such as parabola, which I've told is the most important chapter. If you look at just NCERT problems, it's just not going to help you at all. So look beyond NCERT, stay calm, please don't be tensed. JEE main, very important exam, but not the end of the world. So I hope all of you will do really well in the JEE main examination. All the best for those who want luck. For all the others, may you get what you deserve, and may you all pass this examination with flying colors and reach where you wish to reach. Thank you. Good night. Have a nice time.